Several Balikbayans, as well as 3 foreigners from South Africa, are under monitoring amid the threat of the Omicron variant. Some experts expressed opposition to the planned reimposition of the use of face shields once the Omicron variant enters the country. The MMDA may have been lenient in re-implementing the number coding scheme yesterday, but the agency says they will begin penalizing violators starting this afternoon. Over 1 million Pfizer shots and some 1.6 million AstraZeneca doses arrived in the country yesterday. And let's take a look at where the presidentiables are headed today. Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's everything you need to know as you jumpstart your day. I'm Charles Lejano. Though the Omicron variant has yet to be detected in the country, the government is already ramping up efforts to isolate travelers from red-listed nations. These include over 60 returning Filipinos and 3 foreigners from South Africa who are now undergoing quarantine. JC Cosico with the report.
The Philippines is now ramping up efforts to mitigate the impact of the possible entry of the Omicron variant. The Health Department is currently monitoring 64 Filipinos who arrived from countries eventually placed under the red list due to the highly mutated variant. The Bureau of Quarantine says the passengers were traced from arrivals 7 days before their countries of origin were red listed. All 64 are currently quarantined in different isolation facilities.
Dumating to within 7 days po before ibaba yung IATF protocols natin. Kasi during that time po, yung ibang affected country po na may Omicron is nasa green list pa po. So ngayon po, tinanggal na ang green list. So lahat po dadaan na po sa mandatory quarantine 3, 5, or 7 days na po.
Among those being monitored is a Filipino from South Africa, where the variant was first detected. The OFW is currently quarantined in Negros Occidental.
Wine-verify po namin yung report, sir. Wala naman po sign and symptoms na nag-a-appear po. So by tomorrow po, isa-swab siya ng LGU.
Aside from these 64 Filipinos, 3 foreigners from South Africa are also being closely monitored by health officials. These foreigners arrived in the country last November 25, a day before restrictions were placed.
During that time, there was no advisory yet against travelers coming from South Africa. They work here in Negros Occidental, consultants of a power firm, and they are fully vaccinated using our vaccines also dito from Negros Occidental. And after some time working here, they went back to South Africa para lang mag-bakasyon.
The foreigners are not manifesting any COVID-19 symptoms, but as a safety measure, their apartment where they are currently completing their quarantine has been placed under lockdown. The provincial government of Negros Occidental as well as the foreigners' employer assure the 3 were immediately isolated and were not able to interact with Filipinos. Tracing of the foreigners' close contacts is still ongoing. Amid these developments, the DOH clarifies the Omicron variant has not yet been detected in the country. The agency says they're still processing the next batch of samples to be submitted for whole genome sequencing. Despite this, Health Secretary Francisco Duque III assures the public that detection and isolation efforts shall be intensified. This as the government wants to keep the country's health system capacity from reaching the so-called red zone.
Anything that's beyond 70% is the red line, is the red zone. Okay, we don't want that to happen. Then number 2, we want to protect the vulnerable. Okay, we have to prepare the system for the worst case scenario. Okay, this is what we need to be mindful of.
For News 5, JC Cosico, We Are One News.
An infectious disease expert is opposing proposals of some health officials to reimpose the mandatory wearing of face shields amid the threat of the Omicron variant. On One News' Sa Totoo Lang, Dr. Benjamin Ko of the UST Hospital said face shields should have never been required in the country in the first place. Ko argued that face shields do not provide any significant protection against COVID-19 as the disease is airborne. He He also says face shields are useless against the virus and that its mandatory use should not be reimposed.
Well, even if you're wearing that face shield, it will not protect your eyes because it is porous all around.
Yeah.
So how do you expect to protect your eyes if it is airborne? Diba?
The number coding system has made a comeback in Metro Manila. Some, however, are already having difficulties with the modified policy. Marlene Alcaide with the details.
JR, a tour services driver, was scheduled to pick up a client in Pasig. But with the number coding scheme already in place in NCR, he chose to park in a gasoline station instead.
Tatawag nga po kay boss kung paano gagawin ko eh. Kasi nga po, kukoding na po ngayon eh. Nag-ano po, alas 5. Kaya po, para po malaman ko paano gagawin yung diskarte.
A doctor meanwhile argued with the traffic enforcer when he was flagged down for violating the coding scheme.
Sir, ang kailangan ko lang makapunta sa
Oh, doktor kayo? No problem. We can talk about this. Ang ano lang natin, kalma lang tayo.
Other drivers used the coding hours to rest.
Pag tapos na yung oras, pabalik na upang. Papahinga na lang.
papahinga na lang.
Opo.
Kung hindi lang talagang importante yung ating lakad, i-adjust na lang po yung oras.
The modified coding scheme will be implemented on weekdays from 5 to 8 p.m. except on holidays. Private vehicles with plates ending in 1 and 2 are prohibited on Monday, 3 and 4 on Tuesday, 5 and 6 on Wednesday, 7 and 8 on Thursday, 9 and 0 on Friday. The MMDA decided to re-implement the policy as vehicle volume nears pre-pandemic level at 403,000 per day.
Ito pong 5 to 8 p.m. ay ang takbo po ng traffic, lalong-lalo na sa EDSA, ay nasa mahigit 9 kilometers an hour na lang po sa mga oras na to, which is the same na po halos ng pre-pandemic level.
Public utility vehicles, motorcycles, garbage trucks, fuel trucks, and vehicles carrying essential and perishable goods are exempted from the policy. TNVS riders or those offering ride-hailing services are also exempted. Grab officials have met with the MMDA to discuss how they may identify private vehicles from TNVS.
Ano yung sticker na ilalagay, ano yung size, and kung saan ilalagay yung mga stickers na to para madali rin nilang makita. At the same time, hindi rin mahirapan yung mga drivers natin sa paglalagay ng mga stickers na to at hindi rin siguro nakakasagabal sa kanilang pagmamaneho. Yun yung tinitignan pa natin kung paano natin siya magagawa talaga, yung QR code.
For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
Meanwhile, the MMDA warns that they will be imposing penalties on motorists who will violate the number coding scheme. In an interview with 1PH's sa Totoo Lang, MMDA General Manager Romando Artes said that they chose not to hand out tickets to offending motorists yesterday. That's because they wanted to give them the opportunity to get used to the reimposition of number coding. And Artes added that the policy is expected to help ease the traffic in NCR, even if it is currently enforced at a specific time only.
Nasa 7,000 vehicles po ang mababawas an hour ang mababawas po sa ating mga lansangan with the imposition po ng number coding scheme. So that's around 21,000 in 3 hours span. So na-expect po natin na kahit pa paano makakaluwag po ng konti ang imposition po ng number coding scheme.
However, MMDA Traffic Engineering Center Director Noemi Resio admits that they're already studying the possible full return of the number coding scheme this month.
Inaasahan natin na itong ating 401,000 na vehicles dito pa lang sa EDSA is mas madadagdagan ngayong December na, lalo na kapag malapit na ang Pasko. And sabi nga ni Chairman, huwag natin biglain, tingnan muna natin kung ano magiging effect nitong 5 to 8 p.m. Kapag hindi pa rin tayo umubra rito, sama na natin yung umaga. At pag talagang wala na tayong nagawa at ganun pa rin, that's the time siguro na gagawin na natin maghapon. So mahirap naman, kunyari kasi may kotse ako, maghapon ako hindi makakalabas. So kung lalabas naman ako, ano bang gagawin ko? Siyempre magkukuha ako ng public transport. Kita na naman natin ang public transport, ang haba ng pila tuwing umaga at tuwing hapon kasi kulang. So kung isasama pa natin itong mga hindi magdadala ng kotse, lalo tayong mamumroblema.
With alert level 2 still up over Metro Manila, is foot traffic back to normal in Divisoria given the looming holidays? The answer in this report.
As December kicked off, shoppers flocked to Divisoria to get started on their Christmas shopping. Crowds filled Elias Street to score affordable ready-to-wear clothes, fabrics, and toys. But despite the early Christmas rush, Divisoria vendors are still feeling the pinch of muted sales.
Napakatumal ho. Hindi namin alam kung saan na napunta yung mga customer namin. Ang daming tao pero naglalakad lang ho yan sila.
That's why some vendors have come up with gimmicks to attract shoppers to their stalls.
Mamili na kayo. Mura eh. Kaya pag hindi nakabili, pwede mo na pamasko to. Pwede mo na pambagong taon. Pwede mo na pang Christmas party to. Mura na, maganda pa. Wow, beautiful. Di po tayo bumabalik sa normal na bentahan talaga eh. Masaya dahil darating ang Kapaskuhan eh.
Another vendor flexed his tape recording voice.
35 na face mask ha, mga disposable ha, washable, face mask ha. Face mask washable, disposable. 3 na 100, 3 na 100. 3 for 100 ha, mga washable. Yan ha, 3 na 100, washable. Matagal ako dito sa Divisoria nagatawag. Runner. Mas daming bumibili kasi paninda namin ay nasisigaw namin.
Regardless of their gimmicks and strategies, vendors say all they want is to earn enough for the holidays while sharing some joy to their customers. But not all vendors are given the same opportunity. This, as staff of the Manila City Hall Public Safety Department made rounds at Recto Avenue to clear out illegal vendors. Sellers scrambled to pack up and secure their merchandise, but some of them couldn't leave fast enough, so their goods were confiscated. City Hall authorities said illegal vendors have become more cunning. Even these vehicles that appear innocently parked in front of the sidewalk turned out to be makeshift stalls. But City Hall workers had no choice but to leave them alone, since it's the local police that has authority over illegally parked vehicles. Vendors say the daily rounds of City Hall staff is a threat to their livelihood, especially with Christmas just around the corner.
Pag nagtatakbo, pag nandiyan ng mga customer, hindi mo rin ma-entertain mabuti kasi nga, inaabangan mo yung pagdating ng pulis.
Bella Toledo, we are One News.
Over 2.5 million doses of COVID-19 shots arrived in the country yesterday. More than 1 million government-procured Pfizer shots arrived on Wednesday, along with an additional 1.6 million doses donated through the COVAX facility. The government is expecting to receive 217 million vaccine doses this year. And so far, 66% of that number has arrived. That amounts to 144 million doses, more than enough to cover the 2 doses for 70 million Filipinos. 2022 election aspirants will continue to make the rounds today to woo their voters and to meet supporters. Here's what to expect. Vice President Leni Robredo will arrive in Iloilo today after capping off another series of engagements in her home region of Bicol. Recall that both Iloilo Mayor Jerry Treñas and Iloilo Governor Arthur Defensor have expressed their support for Robredo's presidential run. Meanwhile, the Uniteam tandem of Bongbong Marcos and Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte will close their 2-province sortie in Calabarzon today. The two will visit Batangas after visiting 3 areas in Quezon Province yesterday. And finally, Manila Mayor and presidential aspirant Isko Moreno will be in Pampanga. He'll have a town hall meeting with transport leaders and vendors in the area after a courtesy call with Balacat City officials. Here are the stories to watch out for later today. Some 4 million syringes needed for COVID-19 vaccinations are set to arrive in the country. The first round of the national vaccination drive may have wrapped up yesterday, but the NTF's Bakunahan is heading to Laguna this morning. And the preliminary competition for this year's Miss Grand International happens tonight. Miss Philippines Samantha Panlilio is set to rock the international stage as she vies for a spot in the semifinals. And that's how the day is shaping up to be. Join us again later at 9 a.m. as we monitor the day's biggest stories from sunrise to sundown. You can also catch One News on Signal Plate. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We're One News.